I'm Vinnie Politan. The subject of my investigation is the tragic, cold-blooded murder of a celebrity hairstylist named Fabio Sementilli. The killers have been caught, but prosecutors believe the victim's wife was also part of the conspiracy. Here's the story.
My uncle Fabio Sementilli had been murdered in his own backyard. He was stabbed to death. And his wife, Monica Sementilli, was screaming through the phone. They killed him.
Fabio Sementilli was a celebrated hairdresser and vice president of education at Coty, one of the world's largest beauty companies.
I've traveled the world, and I've been so fortunate. I don't deserve any of this.
Fabio Sementilli's life was cut short at 49 years old on January 23rd, 2017. The father of three was stabbed while watching TV in his backyard. According to court documents, the scene was staged to look like a burglary, but prosecutors say it was his wife, Monica Sementilli, who orchestrated the murder, and her lover, Robert Baker, killed him with the help of Christopher Austin. Austin has pleaded guilty to second-degree murder. Sementilli and Baker were charged with murder and conspiracy to commit a crime. Baker pleaded no contest in July of 2023.
We further admit as to that count the allegation under Penal Section 1222, Subsection B, Subsection 1, that you personally used a deadly and dangerous weapon, to wit, a knife, in the commission of this offense. Yes.
Baker, a convicted sex offender, was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He says Monica Sementilli, who pleaded not guilty, is innocent.
We are confident that Robert Baker's guilty pleas and his truthful testimony will finally establish once and for all that Monica Sementilli had nothing to do with the planning or the murder of Fabio Sementilli, her husband.
Investigators say their motive was to collect on Fabio's $1.6 million life insurance policy. His death sent shockwaves through the hair industry and his family.
He was a blessing and a positive influence to people around the world.
A hardworking, self-made man who loved and treasured his family more than anything, who deserved better than to be betrayed by the person he loved and murdered in his own home.
Sementilli was known for his big personality and motivational advice. Here he is in 2015 telling American Salon how he would like to be remembered.
I think about this a lot, you know, when you kind of sit in the backyard, and I say to myself, you know, what do I want to be remembered for? Family, my friendship, my real close friendships. And then I think the third is, for me, all the stylists that I've touched in my life.
So the killer has pleaded guilty, or no contest, basically admitting he did it, and says that she's innocent. And that brings us to the first question in our investigation, which is, what is the prosecution's case against Monica Sementilli? The killer said he did it. She didn't do it. So what is their case all about? Joining me, criminal defense attorney in Los Angeles, former prosecutor and host of the Courtroom Confidential podcast, Josh Ritter is with us. Also joining us in Los Angeles, trial attorney Liana Kachatri. Great to have you both here. Thank you so much for joining me. What I want to do is play some of the prosecution's opening statement and then sort of pick apart what this case is about. Let's take a look.
That brings us to Monday, the day of the actual murder of Fabio Sementilli. Monday, January 23rd of 2017. The defendant and Baker decide that Fabio is going to have to be killed at home that day. He had taken the day off from work. He was working at home. And I want you to pay attention throughout the trial and some of the slides I'm going to show you today to the extremely tight timeline from that day, the window that existed when Fabio would be alone and this murder could occur, which could only happen with inside information from the defendant ensuring when that exact time frame would be, when Fabio would be alone. In our interview with Christopher Austin, he talks about what happened on January 23rd of 2017. He is told by Baker that the defendant's going to figure out how to get the victim alone, that Baker was getting information from the defendant by phone that she was going to leave at some point during the day to go to a store, and that Fabio would be home alone. And at that point, Baker told Austin, we have to go immediately. We have to go now. Now is our window of time. And Baker drives them in a rental vehicle to the Sementilli residence where Baker parks at some area below the street, and they jog up the hill to the Sementilli home. And Baker tells Austin that the defendant said she was going to leave the front door unlocked, that Fabio would be on the back patio, and Austin told us that's how they knew when they came into the home through the front door to go to the back patio, because that's where Fabio was, and the defendant even told Baker that Fabio was watching TV back there, which was true. They entered the home. You'll see from the pictures of the home, there's some windows when you come in out to the backyard where the pool area is, and that they saw Fabio sitting on the back porch smoking a cigar. And they went out the kitchen door. They attacked, bless you, Fabio on the back patio. Fabio tried to yell, but Baker covered his mouth. Baker started stabbing Fabio. And then Austin stabbed Fabio, he said, once in the neck. Baker then tells Austin he has to make it look like a robbery. And Austin knew prior to going to the location that the plan was that they were going to take the Porsche, because the defendant had told Baker, and Baker told Austin that she's going to leave the keys to it, visible. And so Baker directs Austin to, because Austin is now freaking out. Baker directs Austin to go in the garage, get into the Porsche, while Baker staged the crime scene to make it look like a robbery gone bad.
Okay. We had to boil down 2 days of an opening statement to a few minutes to give you an idea of what's going on here, folks. But Josh, what is the prosecution's case here against Monica?
Well, it's a difficult case. It's a complicated case. It's certainly not straightforward. I'll say this, first of all. You just heard the voice there of Beth Silverman. She's the prosecutor on the case. I've known her for a couple of decades. She is an incredibly skilled and competent attorney. So this is exactly the type of case she would handle with a lot of moving parts. But essentially, it boils down to motive. They believe that the carrying on of the affair between Monica and Robert was a motive, that the insurance money is motive. And then it comes down to her being the only one who would really know the window of time when Fabio would be alone. And that is a crucial point in this entire prosecution case, is that she was able to orchestrate and clue in the actual killers, because she's nowhere near the crime scene. She's in fact purposefully out at a Ralph's and I believe a Target, so that she's caught on surveillance video and not at the crime scene. But she's apparently in communication with them, letting them know that he's alone, and also remotely viewing the surveillance. So that is, in a nutshell, what took the prosecutor 2 days to tell us, in a nutshell, what the prosecution's case boils down to.
Yeah, so, it's complicated, Liana. Obviously, it's very layered, but the actual killers are in custody. What are your thoughts about the strength of this case, trying to connect her to this alleged conspiracy among three?
So I agree that this is actually a very difficult case, right? And predominantly because you have two killers, both in custody. One is saying, I did it, Monica wasn't involved, and the other is saying, I was there when she called and she is involved, right? And so now what they're trying to establish is that she is the mastermind. They're trying to get her on the conspiracy. That small window of opportunity that they had is really being linked to her as her being the only one with knowledge of. And the way the crime scene was described, right, that's how investigators found Fabio in his backyard. So it's a circumstantial case all around, because, you know, unlike Baker, where there's DNA evidence against him, there's really nothing, no smoking gun that they have against her, but they really are trying to pinpoint her as the mastermind because of the communications, you know, as I mentioned earlier, you know, that small window of opportunity. She's the only one with knowledge here. And so they're really trying to paint her as the mastermind behind this entire thing, and that it wouldn't have happened had she not been involved.
And, you know, Josh, you look at this, and, you know, Baker is going to say she's innocent, we think, when he testifies. That's a problem, right? Where the killer says she had nothing to do with it. Like, he has every reason in the world to point the finger at her and try to get a deal.
That's a major problem. And this is a person who doesn't seem to have any motivation for testifying that way now. He has, as you pointed out, pled guilty. He's going away to prison for the rest of his life without parole. He pled to LWOP, which you just don't see. Usually people just take their chances. But he went ahead and took a plea, and we expect that he's going to testify and say she knew nothing about it. Now you compare that to the state's witness, Mr. Austin, who received 16 years. He was also there. He also took part in the stabbing. He's also good for the same crime that everybody else has been accused here, except he's getting 16 years to life, but the possibility of getting out after 16 years, he's going to be the star witness for the prosecution. So the jurors are going to have to weigh the credibility of these two men. Who do they believe? Who's got a motive to be more truthful?
Which killer is more credible, ladies and gentlemen? Right. That's a problem. Okay, thank you both for sticking around. We've got more to get to. Coming up next, who is Robert Baker?
Tell me what you meant when you said there was a sexual thing about Rob Baker.
A true crime tragedy out of Tennessee.
This case is unlike anything I've ever been involved in.
A 15-month-old Evelyn Boswell goes missing
And is later found dead on her family's compound.
Her own teenage mother charged with little Evelyn's murder.
This little girl was let down by everyone in her life who was supposed to protect her.
I think you talked about before Robert Baker and his role in the racquetball league, correct?
Yes.
And you told us that Robert Baker was the one who orchestrated the racquetball, correct?
Could you explain to me what you mean by orchestrated? The way I interpret it, like I said earlier, was that he kind of ran it. Like a cool camp counselor, a cool teacher, you know, where they've got stuff to do, but they were fun while they were doing it. Okay. Is how I felt about it.
You also described him as having some kind of sexuality, masculinity, when you talked about what you observed of him.
Yes, he did. He was very muscular, and he was wearing the shorts. Yeah, he was, yeah.
Tell me what you meant when you said there was a sexual thing about Rob Baker.
He was muscular, and he good in his clothes, and I don't know, he had this confidence about him, I guess.
Robert Baker was leading the racquetball. I guess he gave racquetball lessons and set up the league for the racquetball players at the club. But man, he was sexy in those shorts. This is the man who's admitted to the murder. This is the man who is allegedly going to say that Monica Sementilli had nothing to do with any of this. So let's listen to more. This is, again, this is one of the league members, her first name's Elise, from the racquetball club. Again, describing things she's finding out about Robert, the racquetball pro.
One morning, my boyfriend had said that he had found a sex video with Robert. And so, I mean, you know, it was kind of juicy. And then there were the whispers about it, you know, like, oh, did you know he did a sex thing? And, you know, did you watch it? And, you know, I mean, it's just gossipy kind of stuff.
When you're saying a sex thing, you're talking about porn?
Yes.
Did you ever tell the defendant about any of this?
100%.
Why'd you tell her that?
Because it was juicy gossip.
And what did you tell her?
That Robert was in a sex video.
It's Los Angeles. Okay. He's in a sex video. He plays racquetball. He committed a murder. That brings us to the next question in our investigation. Who is Robert Baker? Who is this guy? What is going on here? Seems like there's a lot going on. Still with me, Los Angeles attorney Josh Ritter, and joining me, psychotherapist and author and host of Talking Live and the Bite-Sized Podcast, Dr. Robbie Ludwig. Dr. Robbie, first, let's talk about the gossip. Like, everyone's finding out, including Monica, that, hey, this guy that walks around with the muscles and the shorts, he's in a sex video. Like, that gossip must have spread really quickly at the racquetball club.
That must have been really juicy gossip. And it's there's something sexy when you're talking about a person who creates a sex tape, and it sounds like he paraded machoism or machismo around, and was very appealing. So sometimes people who are criminals, there can be that edgy, charismatic seduction about them, and it sounds like that was the case for Blake.
And Josh, it wasn't just a sex video, right? I mean, I did a little bit of independent research today. According to my sources that I've got to erase from my history on my phone, I believe he did 80 movies or videos, I think. Very prolific in the industry. So I guess, could we call him a porn star, Josh?
I guess so. That's some great investigative work, Vinny. I was not aware of that. Yeah, we're getting this picture of this guy coming from a very sordid past. It sounds like he had prior convictions. He's got this entire life as a porn star. I imagine if you've done 80 videos, you start to be classified as a porn star. He's been described by various people as sexy and sensual. Point is, the defense is describing him as all of those things, but they're calling him not only charming, but manipulative. And that's what plays into their theory of the case, is that, listen, she was just kind of taken in by him, and he's this kind of reckless individual, and she may have been caught up in this entire torrid affair, but it wasn't her idea to take things as far as he took them. And to answer your question, who is he? He's a murderer. He's a convicted murderer who's going to prison for the rest of his life for sneaking up behind a man and stabbing him to death in his own home.
Brutal murder. Dr. Robbie, there's more, though, because as Josh mentioned, he had a prior conviction. Let's take a listen to the prosecutor, Beth Silverman.
You're also going to hear that Robert Baker was a registered sex offender, and that this stemmed from a series of 1993 convictions for lewd and lascivious acts with a child under 14. You can see here I've listed the counts: unlawful sexual intercourse with a minor, continuing sexual intercourse with a child, oral copulation and sodomy. You're going to learn that the victim in this case was actually his stepdaughter from a prior marriage.
Okay, Dr. Robbie, put the pieces together here. So now we know that he's a sex offender who assaulted his stepdaughter, who apparently was under the age of 14. That is young. It's shocking that he's walking around free after doing that. A murderer, a racquetball coach, and a porn star with a lot of confidence. Who is this guy?
Yeah. I don't think he'd be very popular in New York City. I guess he's a type, but this is a man probably who just came from an awful background and is a pedophile and sexually abuses people and has a rage about him. And he may like the game of seducing and manipulating and working whatever his charismatic magic is to get what he wants. So we can see a little bit of a con man picture. This is a man who uses sexuality to manipulate, to get attention, to abuse, and he's a killer. So this is a very dangerous person. And when we look at him this way, it is very possible he could take a vulnerable woman who was unhappy, let's say, in her marriage, and make her feel like the queen of the universe, and that the two of them together could certainly become rich and have a beautiful life together, and that she won him because he's the prize. We could certainly see that kind of scenario. But the bottom line is, this is a woman who is an adult. She makes up her own mind, and she can also make very bad decisions. What disturbed me the most was that this murder was planned so that the daughter would find her own father. And that's unconscionable to me.
Josh, the other part of this for Monica Sementilli is the credibility of this porn star, murderer, sex offender, racquetball coach is the key to her being set free.
Yeah, and that's why you heard the prosecutor going through his prior record, because if he does, in fact, testify for the defense, they want to know exactly the character that they're going to be hearing from and why his story can't be believed. Because if what we're being told is true, this man, this pornographer, this prior convicted felon, this convicted murderer now is going to take the stand and say it was all me. And I think the prosecution wants to get out ahead of that and say this is not a person you should believe. He's just, for whatever reason, taking one last attempt to try to save his love. By the way, we do have evidence of a continuing kind of romance between the two of them since they've been behind bars. So perhaps this is just some, I don't know what you want to call it, valiant effort, romantic effort to spare her by saying that she had nothing to do with it.
Well, that's what we're going to deal with up next. How serious was Monica and Rob's relationship? I'm Vinnie Politan. We continue our investigation of the murder of celebrity hairstylist Fabio Sementilli. It's a murder that investigators thought was a robbery turned deadly, but now they think it was a murder plot fueled by sex, infidelity, and a former porn star. Here's the story.
Fabio Sementilli was a celebrity hairstylist from Canada living a great life in Los Angeles. He made a great living, owned a beautiful home, and was married to his beautiful wife, Monica. Unfortunately, things were not as great as they seemed. Monica was cheating on Fabio. She had a bit of a wandering eye, and one of her boyfriends was a man named Rob Baker. He was a racquetball instructor and a former movie star, but not mainstream movies. He worked in porn for several years, starring in about 80 different films and videos. Rob is an admitted killer who took the life of Fabio in his own backyard. He pleaded no contest, but prosecutors believe Rob did not act alone. He had help from Christopher Austin, and they allege Monica was also part of the conspiracy. And now Monica Sementilli is on trial for her husband's murder.
A lot of layers to this story, and a lot of it has to do with motive, opportunity. It's all part of an alleged conspiracy here. Now, she wasn't there for the murder. She didn't physically commit the murder, but they say she was planning and plotting it. She's the mastermind. She's the reason that it actually took place. Now, I want you to take a listen to her attorney speaking out, because Rob Baker is one of the admitted killers, and he pleaded no contest in court. And then Monica's attorney had this to say.
We are confident that Robert Baker's guilty pleas and his truthful testimony will finally establish once and for all that Monica Sementilli had nothing to do with the planning or the murder of Fabio Sementilli, her husband. And we're looking forward to the trial, which we believe will establish that fact. Thank you.
Now, there's more to the story. Obviously, prosecutors are going after Monica Sementilli because they believe they have compelling evidence in the case, including this. Take a listen to the prosecutor in her opening statement.
You're going to hear that the defendant mentioned multiple times in these lockup recordings, in her conversations with Baker, that Baker said he was going to lie, that he's going to testify for her, that she was not involved, and he's going to take the blame if it becomes necessary.
Okay, so it seems that prosecutors are saying this is part of the motive for the murder, is this relationship between Monica and Rob Baker. So that brings us to the next question in our investigation, which is, how serious was Monica and Rob's relationship? Were they planning this future together? Was it love? Was it lust? Was it just an affair, or was it the next step in their lives? Is that what they were planning? Joining me, criminal defense attorney in Los Angeles. He's a former prosecutor and host of Courtroom Confidential, which you must take a listen to after this program. Josh Ritter's with us. And also with me, psychotherapist and author and host of Talking Live and the Bite Size podcast. Again, listen to after the program. Dr. Robbie Ludwig is with us. All right, Josh, how serious was this relationship? Was this a fling? Was this lust? Was this love? What are you taking away from some of the evidence here?
Well, I guess it really depends on who you're asking. If you're asking the prosecution, it was incredibly serious. It was the most important thing in Monica Sementilli's life. It was so serious that she was willing to do anything for it, include kill, and orchestrate the killing of her own husband. According to the defense, it's going to be, yes, it was a torrid affair. Yes, it was about sex. Yes, they were exchanging all sorts of, photos with each other and carrying on, but that she had no idea that he meant to take it this far. So one thing we do know is that it was an ongoing, incredibly active affair. And it was an affair where she even referred to herself as Mrs. Baker at points. And it was an affair that seemed to continue after the murders. And it is an affair that even seems to have continued after they've been incarcerated. So there definitely was a strong connection. Now, it really just depends on how strong was it strong to the point of committing murder for Monica Sementilli.
Okay, Dr. Robbie, I want you to take a listen to Matt Nurse. This is Monica's personal trainer. I guess you would use the personal trainer to get in shape to play racquetball. Let's take a listen.
She told me she was unhappy in her marriage. She said she was unhappy and that she thought he was cheating on her. I said, why don't you just get a divorce?
And what did she say to you?
Why throw away 20 years?
Did you ask her anything further about that?
No.
Did you ever talk to her again about getting a divorce or leaving her husband?
No.
Now, during this first 6 months, did she ever show any interest in you romantically?
Yes.
How so? Can you explain how that occurred?
I think it was a lot of flirting, and she asked me out for drinks one time.
Did you go?
No.
Why didn't you go?
I wasn't interested.
Did you tell her you weren't interested?
I told her no.
Okay, did you expand on that or say any reason why?
No.
At that time, did you have a girlfriend or were you in any form of a relationship?
I was in a relationship.
All right, Dr. Robbie Ludwig, what are your thoughts here about Monica? Is she just playing the field out there, the personal trainer, the muscular racquetball porn star with the shorts?
Well, Monica was married for a long time, and sometimes in long marriages, women can feel either that they married the wrong person, or they're not being recognized, or they feel invisible. And so having an affair is a way to experience oneself differently, to feel like they're attractive and like they matter. But it sounds like Monica was really open to the idea of finding someone new. And we hear that from the personal trainer, and we know that from the affair that she ultimately had.
And what are your thoughts, Dr. Robbie, about her finding out before the affair that he's a porn star and then pursuing him? What does that tell us?
Maybe Monica liked that. You know, some women have a high sex drive. Maybe that, you know, she felt he was a star and maybe liked that he had that, you know, movie star cachet to him, even though he was in porn. But it sounds like Monica was looking for sex to feel alive and somehow to be chosen by this man who had the history that he did was complimentary for her.
Let's take a listen now to the racquetball league member who is here testifying about what's going on after Fabio was murdered.
Somewhere around 7 weeks after her husband was murdered, did she ever, she's talking about plans to travel with Robert. Did she tell you that she was involved with him romantically now at this point?
No, she was like, he's so great, he's gonna give me a job, and she was really enthusiastic about it.
Did she seem happy?
Yeah, well, she was stressed about the money, but she was excited about her new ventures.
Did the defendant ever, during the pendency of your friendship, tell you that she was involved with Robert Baker?
No, she did not.
So, Josh, how well known was this relationship? Was this really kept on the DL?
No, it doesn't sound like it was at all. It sounds like many people knew what was going on. They went out in public, according to reports. They went on dates with other people. It wasn't something that she was, I mean, it was obviously something she was trying to hide from her husband, but it wasn't something that was so closely kept, guarded, that not other people were finding out about it. But, you know, the thing about this case is that there's obvious evidence of an affair. And I think the prosecution's got abundant evidence that she was having an affair and probably unhappy with her marriage and probably wanted out of her marriage. But there's a big disconnect between that, which unfortunately a lot of couples suffer from, and going as far as actually killing that person. And that's where the prosecution's going to have to connect those dots for jurors. Is this just another story of an unhappy marriage and a woman who's looking for, you know, excitement outside of her marriage? Or is this a person plotting the actual killing of the parents of her own children? And that's, to me, a very large step in between.
Yeah, let's talk more about that excitement, Dr. Robbie Ludwig, and apparently there may be some evidence. He mentioned that they would go on dates with other couples. Apparently some of these dates with other couples involved the old switcherooski.
Mm-hmm.
What is that swinging? What does that tell you about the seriousness of the relationship? Do you think she's in love with this guy, or maybe in love with this new lifestyle?
Well, the lifestyle could have been very exciting, but I actually have worked with swingers in my practice, and it does not mean that they're not committed to each other. I mean, swingers have very specific rules, and sometimes they find it exciting to see their partner with somebody else, and they set up rules so that they know that they're loyal to each other. So being part of the swinging lifestyle doesn't necessarily mean you don't have the right feelings towards your partner. Just some people find it exciting and meet friendships that way and still feel very committed to the person that they're with.
Dr. Robbie, always great to have your insight on everything. We appreciate it. Josh is going to stay with us. Still to come, who is Christopher Austin?
The time that this was going on, were you aware of Christopher Austin?
No, sir.
It was the biggest story in the world.
People saw the facts differently.
Somebody manufactured evidence in this case.
This was kind of a crazy spectacle.
This case is a circus.
He was an icon.
They are in for the fight of their lives.
Everybody thinks you're guilty.
Trial and Error. Why did O.J. win? A Court TV original series. Premieres February 16th. Only on Court TV.
I want everybody, sir. I don't want one person. I don't want Mr. Baker. I want everybody that's involved, and that includes the third suspect walking up the street and anybody else that's involved in this case.
You know at this point based on what's occurred in this case, that an individual by the name of Christopher Austin has pled guilty to being the second killer in this case, correct?
Yes.
At the time that this was going on, were you aware of Christopher Austin?
No, sir.
Fascinating. Sort of the third person in all of this who may end up being a huge part of all of it, Christopher Austin we're talking about. Let's take a listen to the prosecutor talking about Christopher Austin, who could be crucial for this jury in trying to figure out the truth and what happened.
Robert Baker, who had friends who were loyal to him, like a young guy named Christopher Austin, who would do whatever Baker asked him to do and not ask a lot of questions. He was Baker's patsy, I'm going to call him. And at the end of last year, 2024, law enforcement finally had put together sufficient evidence to arrest and charge Baker's crime companion after 7 years of only having the defendant and Baker charged on this case.
Took 7 years to charge him. And you heard him described as a patsy. Brings us to the next question in our investigation, and it's about him. Who is Christopher Austin? What's his background? What was his role? What will his role be in the trial? How important is he? Still with me, Los Angeles attorney Josh Ritter, and joining me, trial attorney in Los Angeles, Liana Kachatrian is with us. Okay, Liana, this seems to be an extremely important person in all of this, especially going into it. If you have 3 people involved in a conspiracy, and 2 of them are saying Monica has nothing to do with it. I don't think Monica's going to testify, but obviously she says she's not guilty. Baker saying she had nothing to do with it. That puts everything now onto Austin's lap.
That's correct. And really what it boils down to is a credibility issue, right? Is the jury going to find him credible enough? Because keep in mind, he also took a plea deal, right? So does he have the motive to testify in exchange for a 16-year sentence? And how truthful is his testimony? So that's up to the jury to decide. But he is really going to be putting a damper into the defense's strong argument that, Baker's plea is going to absolve Monica of any and all guilt.
Yeah, 16 years is a pretty sweet deal, but it seems like he may be potentially needed by prosecutors in all this. Let's take a listen to the prosecutor in her opening statement.
This is Chris Austin. You're going to hear that LAPD officers from Robbery Homicide Division, where Detective Roberts worked and where Detective Farrell and Byers worked, took a team of officers, went up to Vancouver, Washington, coordinated an operation with law enforcement up there where they knew Austin was living, and they arrested him. And they placed him in a cell, you're going to hear, with an undercover law enforcement agent who posed as his cellmate. The cellmate, the undercover agent says to Austin, to me it sounded like it's the bitch who planned everything. Because again, these agents know that they have to talk in a way, use language in a way such that they will be trusted by the individual that they're put into the cell with. And Austin's statement from the very beginning was, yeah, she did. And you're going to hear the cellmate asked what was the reason for the murder, and Austin responded, life insurance.
Okay, Josh, looking at who this guy is, he's described by prosecutors as a patsy. I mean, is that how you would describe him? I mean, he's a murderer, right? We know that. But is it as simple as he'll do whatever Rob Baker asked him to do?
Well, his motives are really kind of unclear otherwise. There is evidence that he was paid. He was paid apparently in gold coins, but you know, the idea that somebody is just going to be your friend, or you look up to someone, or they've got some sort of control over you in such a way that they could convince you to take part in a cold-blooded murder, by the way, they could put you in prison for the rest of your life. That seems like a stretch to me. It seems like it's going to be a difficult sell for the jurors to understand why exactly he did this. But fortunately for the prosecution, that's not really their problem in this case. Their problem is getting jurors to believe Mr. Austin when he says that, in fact, the orchestrator of this entire thing was Monica Sementilli. And I agree with you, Vinnie, what you said before. I think the prosecution felt they needed Christopher Baker. I don't think that they would be able to bring charges against Monica Sementilli if it wasn't for Christopher Austin willing to testify and say that it was her who orchestrated everything, because otherwise they're dealing with, like you said, 2 out of the 3 say she has nothing to do with it. Rob Baker, who's had his DNA at the scene, so they know he's involved, is saying that he's the only one who really was behind this, and that Monica had nothing to do with it. And I think they knew that Monica was far more culpable. She was the one behind all of this, and they really wanted to be able to get her. And if that meant giving Christopher a sweetheart deal, then so be it. But the defense is going to have a field day with that, I think, when they cross-examine him.
Yeah, the other part of this, Liana, is my understanding is, and from what I've heard from the opening statements, et cetera, is that the information he gets about Monica is really through Rob Baker. So it's like you know, the game of telephone. So he doesn't really have that direct contact with the person who's on trial.
Correct. So allegedly, he overheard this conversation happening over the phone. So again, I think it goes to his credibility. I think they're going to have a difficult time actually like establishing, you know, all of these key pieces of evidence. But, you know, I do think that he is prosecution's star witness at this time.
Okay, so Josh, as you weigh these 2 gentlemen against each other, 2 co-conspirators, you know, who are going to be testifying differently here, which one is more important? I know they're both significant, but which one is the difference maker here?
I think you have to say that Christopher Austin is the difference maker. I think a lot of this prosecution case rides on him and whether or not he's credible with the jurors. But like I said, if you're the defense, you're going to get up and you're going to say, sir, you stabbed this man in the neck, correct? And you did that over pieces of gold, correct? And you got 16 years for that. The other gentleman involved in this is in prison for the rest of his life. My client's looking at first-degree murder and going away for prison for the rest of her life. You're getting 16 years. Aren't you willing to basically say anything the prosecution wants you to say? If he can survive that and still be credible, then he's going to probably carry the day for the prosecution.
Josh Ritter, Liana Kachatrian, in the middle of it all out in L.A. I'm sure we'll be speaking again about this. Thank you both so much. You know, credibility is something that every jury has to figure out when listening to the testimony of witnesses. They can choose to believe or disbelieve what is said on the witness stand. In this case, the key for Monica Sementilli is the credibility of the former porn star who murdered her husband. She needs the jury to believe him, if and when he tells them she had nothing to do with it. Now, will the jury question his motive and his testimony? We shall see. I'm Vinnie Politan. We'll keep digging for the answers as the investigation continues.